Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, I have invited Cameron Geller, who is currently pursuing his PhD from University of California. This is our second meet, and we have posted the first video, which is related to his PhD life, his experiences at University of California. He has discussed the admission process at the University of California and his research life and all. So the link will be pasted in the description. You can go and check out the first video also. So in today's video, we will be talking about stress, depression, which usually a PhD student will go through when he's doing his PhD. So to start with our video, I will ask Cameron what stresses usually a PhD student will go through starting from his first year, because he might have come from a different background, that is from masters, where he might not have been much exposed to the research life or PhD life. So what changes he will face when he start his PhD life? So Cameron, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and again, thanks so much for having me back. It's always fun to do these things. So your first question, if I understand correctly, is just about the transition from a master's to a PhD. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I will say there were a lot of benefits that came with that transition compared to an undergraduate student transitioning into a PhD, because I came with more research experience. Typically, as an undergraduate, you have many more courses that you're responsible for, and so you don't get to dedicate as much time to research, whereas as a master's student, you take a few classes and have a primary focus on research. So I would say that transition helped a lot. I won't say it made me completely immune to challenges of research, but I think it made the transition a little less challenging. But I will say that one of the more difficult transitions from master's to PhD was learning to be much more independent. As a master's student, and this can vary from person to person, program to program, institution to institution, et cetera. But as a master's student, I focused more on learning how to do experiments and learning how to make sense of the data. Whereas a PhD student, one of the challenges I've faced is learning how to design the experiments, learning how to understand, why do I do this instead of that? Why do I not do this? And make sure to avoid it. And so those were challenges that I didn't experience as frequently and have continued to be a challenge that I am starting to better understand, but most certainly have a long way to go when it comes to designing experiments. And really, when you see a bunch of numbers on a screen after you've done an experiment, it's not just saying, oh, okay, here's a bunch of numbers, put them on a graph and show it to your PI. It's like, no, like every single number and be like, is that what it should be? I need to go reread this on the machine because I need to do something to make sure that it's consistent with what, like not like forcing an outcome, but more so just like, I know something's wrong here because I'm confident in my ability to critically reason through this. So all of that to say that learning to be more independent has certainly been a huge challenge.
Yeah. So Cameron, coming back to our topic, did you face any stress or depression or high lows during this journey, throughout your journey?
Absolutely. And I don't think it's something that people should be surprised by, because it just comes with the territory when you start a new experience, right? If it's a new job, if it's a new relationship, if it's a PhD program. And I will add that when I started my PhD program, I was a first-time father to a 3-month-old daughter, and that added an additional challenge that, these two very new experiences in my life that demanded a lot from me at the same time. And that was very challenging for a while. It's gotten a little bit easier. But focusing on the PhD aspect, one of the biggest stresses, aside from mentioning having to learn to be independent, is learning to realize that you're going to make a lot of mistakes. You're going to fail. Don't make the same mistake multiple times. That's a real issue, but you're going to be making many new mistakes. And the goal is to learn to ask yourself independently, why is this happening, right? The PI and the lab will always be there if you're in a good location. But at the end of the day, my opinion of a great PI is going to be, okay, you go figure this out on your own. Tell me what you think it is, and then I'll tell you if I agree or disagree. And so that's been a big stress for me, is I don't feel confident that I know what's going on. I don't feel like I'm smart enough to understand what the science is trying to tell me. And so That's been a huge stress. Realizing there's only 24 hours in a day and trying to do everything you want to do, that's another stress. I attended a talk on our campus yesterday, and I thought somebody put it really nicely. They said, you can do it all, but you can't do it all at the same time. And that's the
Yes.
hard part. You want to do everything. You want to go exercise, you want to go sleep, you want to go study, you want to go do research, you want to, there's so many things you want to try to do in a day, and every day you have to focus more on one thing and not spend as much time on something else. So that's been another stress. And feeling like you're inadequate, imposter syndrome, basically. I'm in a
Incapable.
class, yeah, I'm in a classroom with people who are very smart, very brilliant, very well organized, and I don't feel like I'm at their level. I always feel like I'm the dumbest person in the room, but then I'll have them come up to me and say, oh, you did such an amazing job on your talk. And in my head, I'm like, no, I didn't. But, they probably feel the same way about me that I do about them. Like, oh, you're doing really great things and I want to learn from you, but you never feel like you're at that level, even if people tell you. So major stresses, just trying to do everything, not feeling like you're this very smart or prepared, and not feeling like you're smart enough to take control of your science.
See, one of the most important thing which usually a PhD student may undergo is that when he comes into the PhD program, he may not know many things which a supervisor or PI expects to be knowing. So how you're going to manage these things and all?
So, and yes, I have mentioned this before on LinkedIn, and it is something I wrestled with or experienced for a few months, where I kept making the same mistakes because I clearly didn't understand the problem from the beginning, and that frustrated my PI, understandably, because she might say, "Oh, I thought you knew these things already, because what I saw in your thesis defense as a master's student, like, showed me that you understand these things, and clearly you don't." And it wasn't meant to be thoughtful. It was just more so like I had a different expectation so how to overcome these things. This goes back to what I mentioned previously. You have to sit down, and before you rush into the next step, you need to take a breath and be like, okay, as an example, I need to set up a negative and positive control for an experiment. What's a negative and positive control in general? Okay, that makes sense. What's a specific negative and positive control for my experiment? Maybe that. No, not that. So it's kind of like you have to really sit down, have the internet in front of you. You have people around you can talk to, but most importantly, try to find the answer for yourself first. It's okay to talk to people around you and your PI, but again, you're here not only to learn, but to be independent. You have to learn how to troubleshoot things by yourself. And I realize some people have disagreed with me when I put this on Facebook or LinkedIn. They're like, oh, well, you're probably like a third or fourth year student who's already super independent and has mastered these things, but don't think, and different learning environments might have different expectations. That's fair. But my personal opinion is you should try to focus on learning those skills in the beginning, because if you don't, you're going to have a very miserable PhD experience, in my opinion. And you're welcome to disagree. Like I said, this isn't me being like the all-knowing sage who has life figured out, but I can say from personal experience that taking the time to slow down and really investigate these fundamental problems has started to make things gradually easier, and have given me more confidence to be like, you know what, I think I know what I'm talking about. And it doesn't mean I won't continue to make mistakes, but now I can feel more confident in tackling those mistakes. And I think that's the major component.
Yeah. Then coming to the other topic, which is time management. How are you going to manage? So you should be multitasking. You need to manage the coursework. I think in first year you will be having the coursework, then research work, then your personal life and all everything. How you are going to manage these things?
Yeah. So I'll give a specific example, because you mentioned the coursework deadline. So for instance, I have a take-home final exam for my class that's due next Friday at midnight. And so I put that on my calendar, and I use Google Calendar, whatever format you want to use, paper, computer, etc. Just find what works for you. So I see that deadline for the exam. I can't change that in any way, right? But I can change when I do experiments. So I might be like, oh, I need to do the last step of an experiment on Friday, but I want to give myself enough time to finish this exam. So I might put the final step of an experiment on that Friday and then work backwards. So then that way, instead of trying to start in the beginning and accidentally overlap with when other commitments are there, I work backwards so that I'm like, okay, this will ensure that I don't conflict with any important dates, right? If it's a take-home exam, if it's a meeting with my PI, if it's class, or as you mentioned, if there's a personal obligation, if I have to take my daughter to a doctor appointment or something. So I always try to work backwards so that I can ensure that I don't overbook or accidentally book on top of another obligation.
Yeah. The other thing is that how to gain trust of a supervisor. This is the most important thing.
I would say be completely honest with your PI. If you really feel like what you're being given is too much to handle, just say it. There's this thing where, you can't just come into the lab for 2 hours in the morning, go work out at the gym for 2 hours and come back in the lab for 2 hours and call it a day. You're never going to get anything done. So a schedule like that, you should not be having. You should be in the lab all the time, but you have to also know yourself and tell your PI, you know what, right now I'm still getting a tackle on managing coursework. There's a few things in my personal life I'm still trying to manage. And so right now I want to focus load as I learn the fundamentals in the lab, whether it's learning a new or continuing to have to read literature, whatever it is, and say, if it's okay, I'd like to focus on these 2 or 3 things right now that you've asked me. And then these other 1 or 2 things I can focus on a little bit later. And at that point, you've been completely honest with your PI. And the hope is that before you join this lab, and it should, whether it's, until you graduate or if it's just for a rotation, the hope is that in meeting with this PI in advance, you've got an understanding that their expectations are going to fit your lifestyle demands.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
yeah, so I would say, just be honest, but also realize that you will need to work hard, but things will happen. You will have obstacles and you will need to tell them, hey, I can't do that much this week, but I'm happy to on the weekend or come in the evening if needed or something. Just, try to find a compromise if you can't meet their expectations, and just, yeah.
Okay. So what suggestion you would give a person who is in kind of stressed or depressed from maybe 1 or 2 months, and he's not able to concentrate on his research work or like coursework? It's not like he's not to the capable of doing the things. Because of his mental pressure or depression, he has gone to that stage. So what suggestion would you give to cope up these kind of stresses or depressions? So he need to give his efforts instead of being in that state.
So I think I can give the same answer that was addressed for the last question. Be honest and tell people exactly how you're feeling. You don't have to tell everybody, but find a resource in your program. One thing I love about my program is the insurance they give us actually includes mental health services. So if you want to go to counseling, they have workshops, they have therapy sessions you can go to, and they really take mental health seriously. They realize the stresses that can come from students, and it's not just, oh, shut up and stop complaining. It's like, no, like if you have a legitimate concern, you need to tell us, don't keep it to yourself. That's the worst thing you can do. And so to handle that, find whatever resources you can. Even if your program doesn't have the luxury of having some of the things I've mentioned, I'm sure you can watch videos like this, and there's millions of other videos like this you can probably find where someone is going exactly what you're going through. Talk to people in your lab that are at your level who can relate to what you're going through in the moment, and to people above you who have probably gone through what you're experiencing and are still here and have made it through to the other side. Talk to your PI. If they, hopefully if they're understanding PI, they'll be like, maybe we can take a few things off of your agenda so that you can focus on getting through this. And then when you come back, we can talk about your next steps. So overall, just be very vocal and be very honest. I think one of the biggest hindrances to overcoming this is not saying anything And
Yeah,
it's really
exactly.
important that you let people know.
Yeah, see, the most important thing which I thought to make this video is that it's a common phenomena or a common thing which usually a PhD student will go through, and it's not like only he is going through that. So through this video, the viewers who are looking and who are in that stage, they should know that it's a common thing, and there are solutions to cope up with this. And the main important thing which, as Cameron has shared, this is to talk with their PI, talk to their colleagues, or some senior person who has gone through this stage. So this would be the better solution, and do not stay in that state of mind or this thing. So it's better to take a break. What I suggest personally from my side is take a break, meet your family or friends, so that when you come back, you will be refreshed. And I think this would be another start for you in your PhD life. So can you just tell me how is your current PhD going on? So that last time we spoke, maybe it's been 3 months. So how is it going now?
So let's say 3 months. So that would be September. It's going well. Things are going great. I've had the chance to meet with different faculty who have come from surrounding universities to share their research. I've had a chance to have private lunches with them, with 1 or 2 other students, to basically say, hey, I want to be in your position one day. How did you get there? And, what can I do right now to,
Okay.
start on a good path? So that's, getting to meet people who are in careers that you want to be in, really getting an understanding of how much goes into doing research, and how to prepare for experiments, all these things that, as I've mentioned, I didn't learn before. It doesn't mean there aren't still lows. There absolutely are those days where everything I just discussed will go through my
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
But let me get some water, sorry. But I think it's an important point that I wanted to talk about is the problems never go away. You just get
Yeah.
better at managing them. And that's really, I think, if nothing else matters in this video, that's the most important thing I want of how I feel right now. Some problems every day of some degree or magnitude, nothing that's like gonna make me want to drop out, but it's enough that like I'm like, oh shoot, like I feel horrible again. And then it's like, no, you know what? Like I'm learning how to deal with this. Like, I don't push it to the side. I focus on like, okay, this is a problem, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna jump over it rather than avoiding it. And
Yeah. So Cameron, so coming to the last point, so if I have missed asking some key questions, I think if you have something in your mind, you can share with them so that I can post that in the video.
yeah, so I know that this past Wednesday, December 1st, was the due date for many US PhD programs. And I
Okay.
recently shared on LinkedIn just congratulating everybody on submitting. The hardest part is going to be waiting to hear back. And I think a lot of the issues we described today, feeling inadequate, feeling like a failure, feeling like you're not good enough, you're probably going to feel that as you're waiting to hear back from these programs. You might think, oh, my friend already got an interview offer like a week after submitting, and it's 2 months in and I haven't gotten anything. And I want to stress to you that all of the things we're discussing right now, like we're talking about being in a PhD program. And a lot of people watching this may not be in one yet. They might be like, have just
Exactly.
submitted. So they can't relate right now. But the reality is everything that you and I are going through, I'm positive you probably went through that after you click submit for your applications. You're like, no one's going to accept me. No one's going to interview me. My application is nowhere near as good as anybody else's. But by learning how to overcome that, probably made it easier to overcome similar feelings when you started a PhD. And so I want to tell everybody as a closer that even though you're not in a PhD program yet, you're learning how to overcome obstacles in your head that are going to revisit you as a PhD
Yeah.
program. So if you start to learn how to fight those now, everything we're discussing about a PhD, you'll be more confident in knowing that how to tackle those issues.
Yeah. So it was really a nice talk having Cameron on this talk. So we will be meeting still in more videos with more different topics on different related to this PhD research life, or maybe you don't know what things we'll be going. This was the current topic which I felt it's important to share a video on this topic. So hopefully viewers might have liked this video. So thanks a lot, Cameron, for joining me again.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me.